Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hostler Show. Today we have Eliza Reisfeld, who is an amazing artist who has started her own animation studio. She's also a character designer, storyteller, visual developer, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So first of all, for the people who don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about your history and how you got started? Was something that you were doing since you were a kid, or was something that you took later on in life?
Yeah. So I've been drawing since I was really, really little. My parents were really encouraging of making art all the time. Like we would do it, you know, like in my spare time. It was like my go-to place, my go-to happy place. And I don't know, I played with a lot of animal toys. So I like grew up loving animals, like a lot of like little animal figurines. And then I like started sculpting too when I was really little with the Sculpey clay. I don't know if you guys have Sculpey clay in El Salvador, but it's super fun. And like, it's funny how things come back to you when you're older. You know, the things you love when you're little, you just take to, and it's like definitely reflected in my artwork today. And yeah, so I went to high school and like I always was doodling in class and sometimes not paying much attention. But like in that way, I just like kept practicing and got really involved in my art class, and I applied to art school like at the end of high school, and I got into RISD, which is a really great school on the East Coast, Rhode Island School of Design. And then I studied illustration there and just loved it, and like it just was, like I felt like I was at home, and it was a lot of work, but I came alive there, and it was great to be doing what I loved and like working towards something that I wanted to do as a career. So yeah.
I definitely had the same problem as you had. I used to do a lot of drawings while I was in class and getting a lot of problems for it. Was there a stage where people was telling you like the classic of, oh, art has no future, like if you go into art you're going to starve, or did you went through something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I almost told myself that more than anyone else did, and that was hard. So like I don't know if I can make this a living, and it was kind of scary to go into it, but it was like this drive that I couldn't stop. You know, it chose me, and I had to keep doing it. You know, of course I've worked odd jobs to keep it going, and then once you get your foot in the door and you just keep making work, you end up, you know, pursuing it and hopefully making a living doing it. And I'm lucky enough to be doing that today. But it definitely, yeah, it was really scary. I think my parents were encouraging, but, you know, I think I'm my own worst enemy and also my biggest fan. So I just like had to like push myself and like, you know, push away those like negative thoughts of you won't make it, or, you know, which still come up today sometimes. You know, it's so fun, but it can be hard, and yeah, it's just part of the job.
I definitely understand the part of having a lot of doubts, because I didn't grow up like in the best of environments, which ended up creating a lot of insecurities for myself. But at the end, for me, was more like after learning a lot and trying to go through a lot to try to fix that, I ended up discovering, at least for me, that it was more like a choice. Like you have this, like you say, you have this bad voice in your head, and you have, in my case, it was like this loud voice saying my things, and this way smaller voice saying the good ones. and then taking that really conscious and hard choice of ignoring completely this one and to listen to the small one was something similar for you as well in order to overcome that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, you really have to focus on, like, I think being present in your work and just throwing yourself into it. Sometimes, like, there are days where I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, and like, how am I going to get it all done? Or, you know, is this going to be good? And those fear, like, I think that fear and creativity kind of go together, and you really have to find ways of addressing the fear and saying, you know, okay, I realize you're here, but you just gotta, you kind of have to live with it and be like, put it in a corner and say, okay, like, you're here right now, but I'm going to be present in my work and like just like focus on what's driving me in the positive, on the positive side. Yeah, but it's part, like, fear is part of creativity. I think that's like one of the things I'm learning now and have learned like through my work. And yeah, you just have to, you have to let it be there, but also not let it control you. That makes sense.
Definitely. I also see a lot in your portfolio, and even looking at your background right now, like you have all your art behind that you like to focus a lot of animals,
Yeah.
to a lot of animals. What made you choose to go into that area in specific?
Animals. So I grew up having pets. I had, I know this might sound weird, but I used to have pet rats. And like a lot of people are like, ah, like that's terrifying because rats have like a bad reputation. But I just loved, like, I had a dog and like I loved taking care of animals and reading about them as a kid. And I loved The Lion King. That was like my favorite movie growing up. I watched it like over and over again. And yeah, I don't know. They're just like, I think that you can put a lot of character into animals, and there's so many types of them, and there's just so much to explore in that space, that it's like, it's a really great way to design character and express a story through animals. Yeah, I guess, I don't know, it's like a lifelong love. I don't think it's gonna go away anytime soon.
Definitely can relate to that, since I had like tarantulas, snakes, iguanas, rats, mosses, like
Oh, that's awesome.
turtles, frogs. Like I had like a lot of animals through all. I still have a frog who lives in my backyard, so definitely can relate to that.
That's
Also, you started out an animation studio with other girls. Can you tell us more about that and how did you got it started? How was the history behind it?
Sure. Yeah, so I was working as a toy designer for a few years, and we were making work for Disney and Nickelodeon and DreamWorks, and just basically building books based around their stories. And it was great. It was like a really great gateway into understanding character and product. But after a while, you know, I was ready to like make my own work again and focus on stories that I found more personal. And so I met one of my co-founders. Her name's Abby Van Mugen. She's a phenomenal artist and also just really smart and great with concept and understanding story. And she wanted to start a company. She had been making these really cool hand-drawn videos that explored some academic subjects like global poverty and welfare and just really complicated topics. And a bunch of people saw them and just loved what she made. And so she started getting a bunch of like requests to make more videos. And our mutual friend who knew I was an artist and wanted to do something bigger in my career linked us up and was just like, you guys should meet. I don't know what's going to happen, but Abby, we had a coffee one day and she was like, yeah, so I think I want to start a company. Would you be interested in like helping me build it? And it was this really cool, I don't know, it's been developing and becoming, we have our own studio now in Berkeley, California. And we are making videos, like we make like 3 videos at a time around that. And it's like, we have 3 other women working with us. We're all like young women. So we're like kind of trailblazing and learning as we go, but it's phenomenal. It's called Rogue Mark Studios. So take a peek at what we do. We do a lot of different stuff, which is cool.
Nice. Also, something that I want to ask you is this theme of how you call it, learning the business skills as an art, because there is many people who are like, oh yeah, like I'm an artist, I want to be an artist and all this. And one thing that I discovered is that it is way different to have it as a hobby, like to do art as a hobby and just upload it to the internet and have praise and all that. And there is this other way different thing that is like to be a professional and actually living out of it. And the skills, even though they are similar, at the same time they are different. And there is this thing where you have to become a better artist, which takes like a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. But also learning the business skills takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. So how was it for you to try to learn the business skills alongside the art and having this balance where if you put too much into this, like you let go of the art, and if you go of the art, you let go of the business skills?
Yeah, that is such a good question. It's definitely something that I'm learning as I go. When I graduated from art school, they gave us some pointers and books to look at. Highly recommend looking at the Graphics Guild. It's sort of like the Bible of art business and how to price things. But a lot of what I've learned is just working with different clients and writing contracts, and figuring out, I think art, it's hard because it can be subjective. And also there are some clients that have different budgets, and like sometimes you have to choose clients based on your interest or the opportunity. And sometimes you choose clients because you need to make a certain amount of money. And kind of balancing those two things, it's really important not to take on too much work that, first of all, it's good to take free work when not free work, it's good to take on work that you're excited about in the beginning. It's good to take work you're excited about all the time, but in the beginning of my career, I definitely took on some work that was less well paid, but as I've become more established, I find that it's important to really value my work and work with clients that also value my time and work, and making it clear to them that, it's a business. It's not just, art can be seen as this sort of frivolous thing, like, oh, you'll have fun, so you'll do it for free, which is so not okay. And like, I can't recommend more just thinking about, okay, if I were to spend an hour on this project, especially if you're really not excited about the project, what is that time worth to you? Like, how can you value yourself and what you're making and your time, and using resources to see what is the right price, but also thinking about like, what does it mean to you as an artist? Like, what price do you want to be, setting your work at? And of course, like, as you are more experienced, you can charge more, which is great. But yeah, but also like the balance of making, craft, like working on your craft and the business side, like you kind of just have to go back and forth and, make sure you're setting yourself up for success with good, solid contracts. And then once you're done with that, then just like go and do the work and make it as best, whatever the project is, like just give it your all and do what you can with what the budget is. Yeah.
Yes, I remember when I started like the first business, and obviously I had no business skills whatsoever at the time. It was just like making a lot of mistakes. I started reaching out like the CEOs of business similar to mine, just to ask them a couple of questions. Obviously, not all of them answer, but I remember this guy, Michael, from a company called Firstborn in New York City, and he gave me like an amazing advice back then, which was like this company had a lot of awards and for designs and things like that, and I remember like going, how did you get hold of this? Like, and he told me, like, people who pay a lot of money, like the more people pay for a project, like the less creative advantage you are going to have on it. So his strategy was like, get a really big paying client, like on the $100,000 of dollars, again, New York, but obviously he didn't have it pretty much any freedom on creativity there, but because now he had this kind of money, he was able to take like 2 or 3 smaller projects that allowed him to put like all the creative stuff. So it was kind of like a real big realization for me to realize that all these prizes that he has gotten like were from projects that he barely made any money at all, and all the money that he got was coming from projects that he didn't won any prize for. So it was like kind of a wow.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Yeah, for instance, Roguemark, my company, we're working on this big series of videos for eBay right now, which is super. I mean, it's been really fun, and we're making it super fun. But it is a corporate client, and so, on the side, like we're still practicing our storytelling skills and other, on other projects and smaller clients that have more creative leeway. And so, yeah, it's totally a balance of take on the big client and then do your passion work like on the side, or, just have something that pays the bills, even if it's not an art project that's paying the bills, like making sure you're making money so you can create your work. Because there's no shame in taking a job for money. Like money fuels art, and that's great. Like you just take what you can, right? Sometimes.
Yes. Also, something that I wanted to ask you is because this is a very common topic that I have found through my interviews and from personal experience as well. And this topic is about the creative people, especially the people who have like this huge talent. Usually they are not the most stable people, emotionally speaking, or anything like that. And for example, when I interviewed Tamur or Fred Seibert, and they were all like very well aware of this, and they all told me like, okay, it takes like a lot of time. Like as soon as we got someone in our radar, some of them take even years to decide if they are going to work with them because they had bad experience, because they had, like this is a great talent, they put it in, and then like he didn't work on team, or he was like not responsible, or coming late, or pretty much maybe just a chaotic emotional person. And we had those experiences as well, like people who were like, oh yeah, let's call this guy in, or let's call this girl in because she's amazing, or he's amazing, and then we find out like it was just chaos to work with them, and in the end, like we decided to go into people who had like decent talents, but at the same time that we could see that they were stable and we could work with, rather than amazing talent and unstable. Had you had these experiences as well? And if so, how do you handle this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had, let's see, like going to art school, there are definitely some characters you meet along the way, and some of them are like incredible, and you just, you marvel at their work. But it can be paired with not being like super sociable with other people. At Roguemark, we are like all about the social side as well. So we definitely look for talented people, but we need like our coworkers to meld together, because the team, we're a small team and we make, really collaborative work. And so if you can't work well with others, at least at our company and a lot of most other companies, it can be really detrimental to a project. So I think that, sometimes it doesn't come as well to certain people, like the social side of things, but, as long as you focus on your strengths and try to work on what you're not as good at, like if you're a really introverted person and you don't like working with others, just, focusing on being on time and like showing up and doing your work well, and trying to collaborate as best as you can. But I think people skills are really important, and it's something that I think it's something that I work really hard on. I like meeting people. I like working with others, and so it's been a great joy of mine to be on a team. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. Also, there is this topic, well, you just mentioned that there are people who, in the creative world, that there is a lot of shy people or introverted people. Was that something that you had dealt with in the past? Were you shy at some point, or if not, like, have you dealt with shy people and how did you deal with them?
I don't know if I'd ever describe myself as shy, but I've definitely, I have friends who are shy, and I think what I've noticed, also my boyfriend is really shy, but I've noticed that once you get to know them and get like comfortable with introverted or shy people, like usually they'll open up and it's easier. It's really just like giving people the time they need to warm up and open up. And sometimes I've worked with people that I don't get along with as well, but I try to focus on where like our connection overlaps, or like how we work well together, and like how we can work best together, I guess is a better way to answer it. It's just, I think working with people can be really challenging, even if you're a sociable person, but especially when you're introverted, it's like, it's really overwhelming. And, finding like a group of people that you click with, and like maybe focusing on like a smaller group, or working, like focusing on like making your work the best. It's that, I guess those are the best techniques I can offer. Yeah.
Great. Also, you have done a couple of books, like for example, Mother, What is the Moon, which, by the way, has an amazing illustration. So I really love the style. Can you tell us more about the experience about making a book? Because this is something that, at least in the community that we are trying to build, is a topic that has been more and more interesting. Like people trying to do some books, maybe not now, but thinking about doing it in the future. So can you tell us more about the experience of doing one?
Yeah, sure. So Mother, What is the Moon was my first illustrated children's book, and I paired up with a really awesome author who I worked really well with. We made a good team, and we decided to kickstart the book, and it was a great experience. At the time, I was still working at the toy company that I mentioned earlier, and I decided to go part-time and like really pour myself into the book because it was really important to me, and making money alongside that. But also, we made a really successful Kickstarter that was mostly because we just like poured ourselves into it and said like, we care about this, and we reached out to our community. Since we were a team, we like expanded our community because Dave, the writer, had his group of people and I had mine. And the Kickstarter was a great way to make people aware of the book, and then we got it published, and it's been doing pretty well, like for my first illustrated book. And now I'm working on 2 different books, one with a professional writer, Steve Almond, who is on the Dear Sugar radio podcast, and also my own personal work. I'm working on a book to pitch to publishers that's completely 3D sculpted. Here, I can show you guys. I have some of the artwork here. It's like, right. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, I saw them in your website.
Yeah, so that's yeah, and I'm sculpting. Here's some like little characters I'm sculpting right now. This is like before they're painted. And yeah, this guy's not in the book, but I have him out if you want to see. Little walrus character. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I like doing the personal work, because I can kind of go in I can art direct my own book, which is fun. Yeah.
This is so great. I see you, and it's like most of the people, like, they just focus on one thing, like background design or character designs, things like that. But you are like a well-rounded artist. Like, you're doing sculptures, books, illustration, animation, like a lot of things. How do you balance life with so much thing going on?
Oh man, yeah, it can be challenging. So Mondays, I'm really lucky. Roguemark, since I'm one of the co-founders, I made it sort of this priority to have a day of work that's like my own. So Mondays, it's my like sacred day of the week where I work on all of my stuff. And a lot of people do that on the weekends, which I think is great. And like, I would do that for sure if I wasn't working at Roguemark. But I try to compartmentalize as much as possible. So I'm like, but honestly, that doesn't always work. Sometimes I get overwhelmed by all the things I've signed up for. But if I say, I use my calendar a lot, my Google Calendar, and I block out time and I say, okay, these 3 hours are dedicated to my children's book, and no one, don't talk to me during those 3 hours. And then then the next 3 hours I'm working on storyboards for an animation. So yeah, it's really about like scheduling your time, just being organized. And it's really easy these days of getting distracted by the internet and other things. So not just making time for work, but also making time for breaks is important, because I would go insane if I didn't have time to just like watch some Netflix. Because I love watching TV. I mean, there are great stories out there. I just consider it research. So yeah, like I'd say the best thing to do is just get yourself a really good calendar. Calendar apps are the best, I think, and try to schedule your time to the best of your ability. Yeah.
Which brings me to the next question I was about to ask you, which is the topic about burnout. Like, I have felt it in the past. Luckily, I haven't. I managed now things better today than I did 1 or 2 years ago. But there is a lot of people who like go hard into the work and then they go into burnout, and they can spend weeks completely drained because they are completely done. How do you avoid that?
Well, Burnout. So I get burned out at least once a year for sure. Usually that's around, I go to, I think Rodrigo and I met at CTN, which is this really cool conference called, it's the Creative Talent Network Expo. And I'd say like every year I get burnt out like after CTN because I pour myself into it. I'm just like, okay, I got to make as much work as I can so I can, so I can interact with other artists and like be my best artist self. But yeah, in terms of like coping with burnout, I'd say I do yoga. Let's see. I mean, I make sure that I do things that are not art as well, because like we're people, like just because you want to be an artist, this is for me, like I can't be an artist 24/7. It's definitely a big part of my identity, but I have a family that I love and I have friends that I love, and I think if I didn't have time set aside to spend with those people and do things like exercise or watch Netflix, like I would go crazy. So yeah, just like, I guess rewarding yourself with those things, and like I said before, scheduling in time for art and for like family and life, and just like, yeah, trying to structure your time as much as you can is good. Yeah, and don't
For
feel
me,
yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just
go
like,
ahead.
Don't feel I can feel really guilty sometimes about like not drawing. I'm like, oh, I should be drawing right now, but like giving yourself the space to feel like it's okay. Like I will draw when I have scheduled that in or when I'm inspired to draw. Yeah, just like give yourself that space to not feel like you have to do it all the time.
Definitely something that happened to me that now I'll see it is good because it allows me to rest, but in the beginning was kind of frustrating, is that on Sundays, I call them lazy Sundays because it is like my brain knows it's Sunday, and as soon as I wake up, like the brain works maybe at 20%, and there is nothing I can do the whole day. Like it just, I cannot just think of anything, and I cannot just advance work, and at the end I just give in. So every Sunday is like complete lazy day, like Netflix games kind of stuff. Like I got here the controller. So but at the same time that allows me like to rest really well, and on Sunday it's like, hell yeah, let's go back to the work. But and after that, like if there is a lot of work, and right now we're entering a period where I can see a lot of work coming in the next 4 weeks or so. Probably after 3 months or so, I'm going to end up like a week of not doing anything into the world again. So it's like 1 day a week completely rest, and then 1 week every 3 months like completely doing nothing. And that has allowed me to kind of balance things out.
That's great. Yeah, I think it also, it's totally personal to what works for you. But I also I definitely have at least 1 day of the weekend where I do nothing. And I listened to this podcast. I think it was called Death, Sex, and Money. But they, one of the people they interviewed said she has shouldless days, which is like when you don't tell yourself you can do whatever you want. Like you don't have to go anywhere. You have to, just relax. And I think that's so important. Breaks are great. Just not too many breaks. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, how did you started to get into sculpting? I know it was like something that you were interested since you were a kid, but how did it become like a thing you still do?
So I've been sculpting for a long time. I think at RISD, I started sculpting characters, and there was one teacher that I had that was a mentor of mine, and he really encouraged me to use that as a style, because I think I realized that I love to draw, and I love painting and drawing and all those things, but there's something about sculpting that I feel like it's like my true voice coming out. And when I sculpt, I get really like I don't get stressed out, I guess. Like there are times where I'm drawing, I'm like, this doesn't look right, or you know, I have to keep like erasing and changing things. But sculpting is one of those. It's almost, yeah, it just comes really naturally. But I've worked a lot at it, so it's something that I just have continued to do. And I found my sculpture voice, I'd say, in RISD. I studied abroad, and I made all these, like, actually I have one here, like, this is a little pigeon. I made like a bunch of these, and I also like made a bunch of dogs, and made this whole like, I made this whole set basically that was this interpretation of where I was, like in Rome. I saw a lot of people walking their dogs and a lot of pigeons, and I just got inspired by my surroundings and like made my own miniature version of that. And that's why I was like, I should make a children's book like this. Why not? Yeah, that's where I got it from.
That's great. Also, so this is a kind of a tricky question. When you started like this career into art and becoming a professional artist and all that, what was something that you think was really important that you learned that you did not expect at all to find into all these industries?
So, okay, so something I learned that I didn't expect to apply.
And that is important, yeah.
Okay. That's a really, yeah, that is an interesting question. Something I learned. I think just like realizing that the best work comes from your own stories. You know, I think that like I tried a lot in school to do things that were like inspired by other artists that I thought looked good, and I like tried to fit myself into those roles. But then once I was out of school and I was making more work and like figuring it out, you can, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm answering this question well, but there's so many routes to being an artist, and you can really like take a bunch of stuff that you've learned that you don't expect. You just like wouldn't expect that, you know, I took like a 3D class at RISD, and we made things like we worked in the wood shop and like made sleds and like chairs and things like that. And I don't necessarily make furniture now, but I definitely used those skills to be a good sculptor. And sculpting, I think, can inform drawing, and like it's all related, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I don't know. There's so much you can learn from your roots and from the world around you. You know, you just like, you never know when it's going to show up, and that's cool. It's exciting.
Yeah, this is something, a recurrent topic that I see with many artists who have created like amazing stories, is that it usually comes from experiences they have while living or traveling or experiencing new things.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely I know a lot of artists who are like talented artists, but they are just like completely locked out in their rooms, creating a lot of art from the things that they see in the internet and inspirations from histories that they learn through books.
Mm-hmm.
And while it, again, like they are good artists, I think they are very limited because they are not going out into the world. So, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think yeah, I'm working on a story right now that's based on my relationship with my mom and my sister, and I'm like I've like turned us into a family of chameleons. But you know, like it's really fun to understand my own story through my art and using it as a tool to express yourself and tell your story, because no one else has a story like you. But also, like, people can relate, as long as people can connect to your stories and find yeah, connections in your stories. That's how people fall in love with your artwork. So yeah.
Also, on the other hand, what was something that you completely expected to find in the art industry or in your life as a professional that did come true?
That did okay. So sorry. The question is.
If the last question was, what didn't you expect at all to happen, and then you found, this is like, what did you completely expected to find out, and then it became true that, oh yeah, like I completely expected that happening.
Okay. Let's see. I don't know. I mean, I expected. I guess the feeling of working with other artists that are like as talented or more talented than you, like that, like you will find people of both on both sides, or like who are less talented and as talented or more talented. And I think like finding ways to, because like it's easy to feel competitive, but like finding ways to like learn from people who are better than you, and also like to just be more present about where you are. I definitely have like encountered that a lot, of finding like, you know, people on all different levels and working with them, and yeah, finding a way to like not get jealous or like use that as like an advantage to learn from them, instead of being like, oh well, I'm gonna shut down because I'm not as good as that person. It's a really important lesson I've learned. I think it's like definitely everybody feels that way at one point or another.
Yeah, because there is a lot of this environment that gives the message of like, if you are not like this amazing artist, like you're not going to make it, or you have to have like this amazing art. But then we have things like Rick and Morty, or I don't know if you have seen this Japanese series called One Punch Man. If you see like the original comic from the guy who came up with the story, like the drawings suck. Like they really, really suck. Like I could do way better things than that when I was in 8th grade. And, but the story was so good, and the idea was so good that it became this huge thing that even has his own animated series right now. So, and the more I interview people and the more I go deep into art, I see many projects that have born from artists who didn't have like this kind of Michelangelo type of art or Leonardo da Vinci type of art, like very basic art, but the ideas were good, and that's so. It definitely think it puts into perspective more this thing that you say, that the competition where you have other better artists, uh, but that's just your own appreciation of the art of the other guys. So.
Yeah, totally. And I think like you bring up a good point of, if you have really great ideas and maybe you're not as great of a draftsman, that doesn't mean that your ideas are so important. And you can work with other artists too that might have a different perspective and can elevate your ideas. Like I work with, we have a writer on our team, and she's awesome. Like she's great with concept, and she's really creative, but she doesn't really draw. Like she wasn't trained to draw, but she's been practicing, and it's been amazing to see the progress she's made, and also to work with her because she thinks about it in terms of writing and story. And so, you know, the other artists on my team who are more on the like the art side, it's a great collaboration because we're working with different minds, and like that's what makes great art, is like working with others, and like even if it's a personal project, like showing it to another artist or another creative, it'll just make the work better.
Also, what is the most common mistake that you see people who are beginners into the art world making that they are not aware that they are making?
I would say similar to what we were talking about before, a lot of people make work because they think certain companies will like it, or people will like it because it looks like other art that is successful, and it becomes derivative. So a lot of times like that art doesn't really shine because it's not really, it's not taken from the heart, or like it's like it needs to, you know, put your own personal spin on it, because people hire you for your ideas and for your voice, like your experience. And I think like making art that's true to your story and to your style, not that you can't be inspired by other artists. Like I totally, you know, everybody needs mentors and inspiration, but and you can practice to draw like them. But when you make your own portfolio, make sure that, you know, you're taking those voices and translating them into your own work and your own voice. That's the best advice I could give. Yeah.
Something that I almost forgot to ask you, since you already have experience on Kickstarter, I see a lot of people like thinking of Kickstarter like something magical where you just put the project and then it gets funded. Yeah. And it's not nearly as easy as that. Can you tell us a little bit about the experience that you have first doing the Kickstarter and then like making the Kickstarter happen?
Yeah, the Kickstarter, it was a lot of work. And, you know, I was lucky to have a team member, Dave Griswold. He did a lot of research and a lot of hard work on networking. So staying organized, like having spreadsheets, making sure you know like who you're reaching out to, who, like having email lists, like using MailChimp, which is a great resource. We, you know, it's not just making your product. You know, like we made our children's book, which was a ton of work. And I was lucky enough to have Dave. He worked mostly on the Kickstarter side and the writing. And then I was working like a lot on just creating our product. So yeah, having a team member is great. And also, yeah, staying organized. And then just like being aware of your limitations. So say you promise, you have to reward your customers. So you want to make sure with Kickstarter that you set a goal that's realistic with the money. So we set our goal at 10,000, and which we were really hoping we'd make 10,000. But luckily we made twice that amount because the way we worked our campaign, we were able to reach more people, and like it was more popular than we expected. But we didn't want to like say, oh, we need to make $20,000 for this project, because maybe we wouldn't have reached that, and then you don't get the money if you don't reach your goal. So being realistic about goals, and also the rewards that you give people, making sure that you can deliver on those rewards, because if you say, we'll give, you know, if you spend $100 on our campaign, then we'll give you a custom-made drawing, and then like say 20 people do that, you have 20 custom drawings that you have to make now, which is like a lot of work. So just thinking about like what is realistic, and what people would feel like excited about. So kind of pairing those two things, I'd say, is like the best way to like make a successful Kickstarter. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we had some experience with that, but like we were doing a lot of preparations beforehand, trying to do a Kickstarter, and 1 week before the launch, like everything started like coming down. Yeah, and
Oh.
pretty much everything went bad, like completely not expected that. And we didn't got to the funding. However, we did got a lot of lessons of what to expect into the future, and that we should have prepared way more than we thought. And I was being like very paranoid about it. Like it really, a lot of things happened that, looking back, I think it would have been better for me to just postpone it and say, okay, like this is not going to happen, but we still like just did it just to get the experience. And in the end, like we did learn a lot, and that it was like, I thought it was hard. It was way harder than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you will, I feel like something you will stumble at some point, whether it's with Kickstarter or with a client that just like, it's like a disaster client. You know, like things happen and you just have to brush off the dust from, and just like pick yourself up and say, okay, well, maybe I didn't make my funding happen, or maybe this client didn't pay me on time, but like I'm gonna learn from those things. Like, how can I make it better the next time? You can't like failure isn't like things not working out. It's not trying again. That's what failure is. So that's something I've been learning as I go.
Yeah, definitely. Also, there is a very hard question that I like to ask people as well, just to see their answers. Let's say you wake up tomorrow and you wake up in another dimension. Nobody knows you. Like you have zero reputation, but you still have all your knowledge. You still have all your skills. You have a computer. You have $500 in your pocket. What do you do to get to this point as fast as possible?
Oh, that is a good question. I would say I would like, I've thought about this a lot, like, because I've thought about if I ever moved, what would it be like? Because where I live right now, I have a lot of connections and I've built that over time. I would say just make work that is exciting. Like if you're in another dimension and you've never seen this world before, try to uncover like, what does it mean to you? You know, like what, how do you relate to it? And like, just draw and work and, you know, take odd jobs. Like maybe that world, I don't know what the world would be like, but if you like had to do a job that you didn't really want to do, but you had to do it for your art, like I would do that for sure. As long as I like found time to draw. Yeah, I think it's just about like showing up and doing the work, no matter what, whatever it takes. Like, and there's no shame in doing work to make money, because I think that's just, sometimes you have to do that to create art. I hate that money is a thing. It's not my favorite my favorite device, but we all have to make it, and it's exciting when you make it because it, you know, it validates your work in some ways, but the biggest validation you can have is feeling good about what you're making artistically. Yeah.
Definitely agree with you with that. Is there any advice that we haven't talked about that you would like to give to people who are starting out their arts career as a professional?
Yeah. What I would say is, and this is something I've been learning, because when I graduated from RISD, I said it was sort of like Pixar or bust was like my feeling about the world. And it's not that I would never want to work at Pixar, but learning what works for you, and finding, our careers are long and there's a lot ahead and there's a lot of journey that we go through, and being open to the possibilities. There's so much you can do with art. There's so many ways of finding your path, and just kind of like, I mean, they're not to say that it's going to be super happy all along the way, but just every job matters, because it brings you to the next place, even if it's like doing something that you wouldn't really want to do, a project that you didn't want to sign up for. You'll learn, like, I didn't like that project, I don't want to do work like that, and then you can find work that better suits you. And Roguemark has been a big lesson for me, because I never in a million years was like, I'm going to start a company. Like, that was not what I had in mind for my life. But it happened, and I could not be more grateful for it. It's such a wonderful place and a wonderful group of people, and I get to grow in this space that I wouldn't, maybe I'd have a different kind of growth at a place like Disney or Pixar. But yeah, just kind of finding the things you love about where you are, and learning from what you don't like about something, and trying to, apply that to your next job, or your next project.
Nice. Yeah, definitely I can relate to that as well, because I never in my life thought I will be putting a company, let alone I imagine that I will have like a company that fits into a laptop and travel the world. Like, that was never crossing my mind. However, it did become something I truly love, and to combine that with the art was like, wow, this is amazing. And then especially since I was like this kid where all my teachers were telling me, because I was doodling in their classes, I was doing drawings in their classes, and I had all these teachers telling me like, no, like, you're never going to make a living out of this. Like, my inner child is like, take that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely agree with you on that. It's really great.
Yeah.
Also, if people want to find you online, where can they do it?
Yeah, so if you want to see my personal work, it's you can go to my website at elizareisfeldart.com. You can check out my Instagram. It's Eliza Reisfeld Art. Facebook, same thing. Actually, that's Eliza Reisfeld Illustration. And then Roguemark, you can just go to roguemarkstudios.com. It's spelled ROGUE MARK studios.com. So yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for being here and giving us your time and your lessons. It's truly appreciated.
Absolutely. I wish everyone the best of luck, and I'm really happy to be here.
So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hustle Show. If you like this video, please click the like button on YouTube below, and also share this interview with your friends. Until next time.